I'm going to start with a ghost of Christmas past. The last leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, because it's a massive silver lining to his epic uselessness, is that it allowed some of us who lean to the left to free ourselves from tribal loyalties, to free ourselves completely from partisanship. I keep trying to find a better word than saying blind on the radio, because I know that is... It upsets some people, and understandably so, but there is no word that quite close-minded, I don't know, but you know what I'm talking about. What Corbyn's uselessness did, and I know not everybody's ready to hear this yet, or to admit it, it's kind of the leftish equivalent of Brexit, and that's fine, but hey-ho, I'll continue to tell the truth, and when you're ready, you can join me. So one silver lining to Corbyn's epic uselessness was the objectivity that it afforded many of us who largely lean to the left on issues of, for example, social policy and wealth distribution. You couldn't stay loyal to such epic uselessness unless you were, you know, the line that comes in next, unless your scarf was tied so tightly around your neck that you'd cut off the flow of blood to your brain. So I like that on a day like today, because you can, I think, see that many people, and the front page of the Daily Mail goes at least as far in its condemnation of what happened in the House of Commons yesterday as I am about to do, then you'll know that it's not partisan. You'll know that this is somehow, somewhere, and I know the Daily Mail are probably just giving the government a little reminder of who's really in charge, which is a slightly different motivation from mine. But there has to be, for a society to function, there has to be a consensus on decency. Somewhere, somehow. If there's no consensus on decency, you end up with scenes like the ones we saw in America on January the 6th. If people in public life, in the public space, can abandon any semblance of integrity and morality so completely and so formally, actually within the institutions, within the House of Commons or within the White House, then history has taught us that absolutely everything is up for grabs. The coup attempt on January the 6th was a direct consequence of an erosion of standards, an erosion of consensus, an erosion of integrity undertaken from the moment Donald Trump declared his candidacy. And I still don't buy that the parallels between Johnson and Trump are complete, although Angela Rayner, who will be joining us on the programme later today, of course, did land that punch among many punches at PMQs yesterday. But the abandonment of objective morality in favour of subjective favouritism or entitlement is horrible to watch. And it's a hell of a lot more horrible to watch when it's happening in your own country than it is when it's happening on the other side of the Atlantic. And the reason I mention Jeremy Corbyn, the reason I mention partisanship, and the reason I mention footballification, and the reason I mention the front page of the Daily Mail is that today of all days, I beg you, please see this as an issue that transcends party politics. Please see this as an issue that transcends partisanship or personality cults. This is about what our parliament does. This is about hundreds of years of precedent and tradition designed to safeguard our imperfect but functioning democracy. It's also in the shorter term about the measures and balances that were put in place to prevent a repetition of the sort of sleaze that ultimately brought down John Major's government. So think of it in terms of conservative government, if you must. A previous Conservative government, or rather a previous parliament, decided this is the best way to guard against corruption. And yesterday, Parliament threw it out of the window. If you're fond of pithy one-liners, I'll tell you precisely what they did yesterday. 250 Conservative MPs voted to get rid of brown envelopes containing cash while keeping the cash. They voted to get rid of the brown envelopes. Nobody disputes that Owen Paterson took £500,000. £500,000. £500,000 from private firms who he hosted in his office and who he lobbied for to the highest levels of government. He lobbied in person, he lobbied orally, he lobbied in letters, he lobbied in emails, while trousering a total of £500,000. Pause for a moment to work out how long it would take you to earn that doing your job, and remember then that this is money he trousered in addition to doing the job that is supposed to involve representing members, residents, citizens of Shropshire North. Have you worked at £500,000? £500,000. What did he get it for? He got it for, nobody disputes this, not even him, he got it for lobbying, in other words, promoting the interests of companies that were paying him money. It's mad. It's not a debate. It's not a conversation. It's not an argument. It's disgusting. It's egregious. It's despicable. And 250 members of our parliament walked through the lobby yesterday to try to let him off the hook. They also then voted, of course, to rip up the entire standard system that was put in place. Actually, it was after the expenses scandal, wasn't it? It was not after Tory sleaze. So again, in the interests of not being partisan, I think in retrospect, the expenses scandal was more nuanced than I realised at the time. I don't know many MPs socially, but as the ones that were around at the time that I've come to know since, they all arrived in Parliament on a nod and a wink that the reason why their expenses were to be abused in such an egregious fashion was because they couldn't take a proper pay rise to the public. So although some managed to rise above the fray, it wasn't quite the moral cesspit that I truly believed it to be at the time. Many of these people were motivated by almost the fact that it was being done everywhere. It's not a defence, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation that I didn't fully grasp at the time. And some very good constituency MPs ended up having their reputations ruined forever by their association with the expenses scandal. So the House of Commons then brought in rules and standards and an entire system designed to stop such abuses happening again, designed to stop MPs lining their own pockets in a fashion that we, the great British public, would find obnoxious, offensive or wrong. And yesterday, 250 of them voted to spare a man found by an independent committee of his peers to have behaved in the most egregious of fashions and to rip up the entire standard system. Today, of all days, if you can't loosen the knot on that Brexity Borisy scarf, then we are on a path that could end somewhere like America on January the 6th. Make no mistake, it's not a prediction, it's a warning. It might not happen, but it might. The more you abandon the most basic tenets of public standards, the more you run the risk of being left with absolutely nothing.